This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Let's do this. Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson with you alongside the CTO, Michael Remis. Great to have you with us in a big show today. We're looking forward to welcoming in Winnipeg Blue Bombers starting quarterback Zach Collaros. And kind of thought that the CFL might be top billing today, but big news with the Winnipeg Jets. Neal Pionk has re-signed with the club for 4 years. We'll get into that in just a minute. And Murat is going to join us. We'll talk about, get his thoughts on the Pionk contract and what this means for the Jets salary cap right now. And obviously the one remaining RFA with the Winnipeg Jets in Andrew Kopp, who's got an arbitration date scheduled for the 26th of August. As always, we're brought to you by our great family of sponsors, including Canadian Club Whiskey, Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Paramount Services Limited, Not Autocorp, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend Country Club, and of course, Coolbet Canada. Speaking of Coolbet, just finished up in the last half hour or so this week's edition of The Lock Shop. If you're not already subscribed or you're listening on the podcast, you want some fun betting content that I'm doing with Dustin Nielsen out in Edmonton, just search Lock Shop on wherever you're getting the podcast from and check that out on a weekly basis. We'll get back to 2 times a week come September to both hit the CFL earlier in the week and a full slate of NFL games heading into the weekend. All right, let's get Michael Remis in here. Remo, big news today on the Winnipeg Jets front. Kevin Cheveldayoff does it again. The summer of Chevy continues. Neal Pionk signed at under $6 million, albeit for a 4-year term. Very interesting. I think the number makes a lot of sense, especially when you look at the cash thrown around for top defensemen. And Neal Pionk has been the Jets' top defenseman for the last couple of years since coming over from the New York Rangers. So I think there's some great value on this for the club based on the market right now. It's nice that you get a few of those UFA years, but at the same time, it didn't seem like they had the ability maybe to stretch it into a 6 or 7 year deal. So I think 4 is great for the player, excellent for the team, and it really does focus in on this window for the Winnipeg Jets with the likes of Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck signed, and of course Blake Wheeler's contract as well, that this is the time that they will be going for it, and Neal Pionk will be a part of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, and thank you for having me on, as always. Happy to be here. And, you look at the deal. I think we were talking about the money, looking at what some of these other defensemen have signed for. You thought he was for sure getting closer to $7 million to be and then you look at the Jets' hierarchy of contracts. Morrissey's around to $6.3 million. You thought, okay, Pionk's been the number one guy. At least he definitely was last year as the top performer. You would think that they like to go by their hierarchy, and maybe they would give him more than Josh Morrissey, but to come in under $6 million for 4 years, I think that's a really nice value for the player and the team. And you talk about the window to win. You look at the Jets cap space now. You have, it's really the next 3 years because you have a number of players signed for 3 or 4 more years. Wheeler's got 3 years. Scheifele's got 3 years. Ehlers has 4. Lowry, he's got 5. But the defense is set for the next 3 or 4 years. DeMello and Dillon got 3 years, and Pionk and Schmidt have 4 years. And the Morrissey's got a long one, $6.25 million. And he was actually on, I don't know if you read Dom in The Athletic, but he was on Dom's worst contracts in the NHL. But I think we can all are hoping for a bounce back for Morrissey. Oh yeah, Hellebuck 3 more years. So the Jets have they have a core group right now settled in for 3 to 4 years. And it's going to be up to them to find now value contracts, so you can fit everyone in under the salary cap. Because now that Pionk is signed, your next thought is, okay, what's Andrew Kopp going to get? When's his next deal? Because his arbitration date is the 26th, and I've joked, the main event of arbitration. I want to do a little Bruce
hopefully
Buffer.
It's not the main event. Hopefully that match is canceled. And,
that doesn't make weight.
Exactly. For some reason, they don't end up getting there. But I think it was important. You never want to go to arbitration with the player. And, Neal Pionk came here in sort of interesting circumstances. We all know the background before Jacob Trouba was finally traded, and the fact that the Winnipeg Jets were really sort of, cornered into, one team legitimately that, would re-sign, that the player was willing to re-sign with. And, there was all sorts of terrible takes on Neal Pionk when he was acquired by the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
We won't go through the receipts.
Right here.
Right there.
I remember saying, oh, this isn't a trade that you do if you're trying to win right now. This isn't a trade. And I ripped the trade. But then I saw, the analytics guys, Dom and JFresh on Twitter, posting, his stats card. And they gave credit to the Jets saying, hey, look, they saw this guy who did not have great numbers in New York. And I don't know if they developed him or they saw something they needed to unlock or needed to get away from the Rangers. But he's flourished here into a, second pair, top pair D. And I think, great work by the Jets. You get him for Trouba, who wasn't going to sign long term. And you get Ville Heinola. And I know it was the Jets' pick to begin with. We can debate that later. But, you got two players for one. And I think this trade is a definite win for Cheveldayoff. And I don't know if he's going to be up for GM of the year, but we'll see how this goes with the Kopp. But I think he's
GM of the summer. He's GM of the summer.
Yeah.
We can look. Can we get a banner for that too? Let's put. We've already had off-season champs. Maybe we put that up. But this was huge for the Winnipeg Jets. With all of the excitement about the additions of Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt, Neal Pionk was an absolutely key member of this team. And, you wanted to have some certainty that he was going to be here going forward. And frankly, I think not having to go through this again in a year or two, on another short-term deal that, would end with the potential hammer of arbitration. So, listen, the Jets have done such a good job with some of these extensions, especially in the current climate with the money that's been given out to top defensemen. And Neal Pionk has been that for the Winnipeg Jets. And, one could argue that and I know we'll get into this with Murat coming up in a few minutes. One could argue that Neal Pionk, we were talking about, losing power play time. For the most part, he wasn't the quarterback in the number one power play, although I argued many times that I thought that he should have been. And just back to Dom's comment on Morrissey's being one of the worst contracts in the league. I think that'll look like a pretty bad take in a year, because much like Neal Pionk, and maybe we'll give more credit to Pionk for, especially in the second half of the season, I think more or less carrying Derek Forbort at times. You could say the same thing about Josh Morrissey, who never really got a chance to play with Dylan DeMello until the final couple games of the regular season and the first round against the Edmonton Oilers. So, I'm not here to tell you that, Josh Morrissey didn't have a down year and, has had a tough couple of seasons. But I'm certainly not out on Morrissey like a few fans are. And certainly, as I said, I think that things will look a heck of a lot different with the additions of Schmidt and Brendan Dillon in the top four. And I think that's only going to be good news for Josh Morrissey and Neal Pionk. So, it's pretty amazing, Remis. 3 weeks ago, we were talking about the potential of losing Dylan DeMello in the expansion draft and did not have Brendan Dillon or Nate Schmidt. If you had told, if a Jets fan had gone into a coma for a month and woke up today realizing that Pionk's on the books for 4 more years and Dillon and Schmidt are here, it really is night and day. And the entire narrative around the Jet blue line has gone from it being something that was somewhat of an Achilles heel over the last couple of seasons to something that I think right now, when you look at them 1 to 6, not to mention the guys that can move into the lineup if there's injuries, a strength of the hockey team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with you on Morrissey, Huss. I think you look at his D partners, he hasn't been really paired. Been put in a position to have a lot of success, i.e. being paired with Dylan DeMello, which we saw in the playoffs have a lot of success stopping, playing against, Draisaitl and McDavid. So I'm willing to, on any player, I'm willing to throw out last year, odd season, things are coming back, and we'll see how it goes next year. as far as the Jets defense, I mean, this is why Chevy is the GM of the summer. Everyone saw the Jets' needs. They needed to add defensemen, and they went in and addressed it. And not only did they address it for this upcoming year, you got a couple more. You got 3 seasons of Dillon, and you got 4 more seasons of Schmidt. So the Jets' defense is set. And then you have these young prospects, Stanley, who's probably going to have that last spot. But Sandberg and Heinola, who we've heard are ready for a while. They'll be playing in Winnipeg with the Moose. And if someone gets hurt, you can plug those guys in. I think if Schmidt or Morrissey, Pionk get hurt, you bring in Heinola. Just going by ice hockey, small to medium D.
Nintendo theory.
Yeah, the Nintendo ice hockey theory. And if you're taking your if your big guy comes out, in Dillon, then or Stanley, then you maybe throw in Sandberg and move up Stanley. We'll see. I think the Jets are in a bit of rough waters here, navigating the salary cap as we move forward. But I think that's fine. Most of their team is solid. You just have to find pieces at low salary to augment it. So they're going with, you're going with the low cost backup goalie. We're projecting the low-cost, defenseman. Well, that's why, the Heinola contract is very valuable. Stanley, valuable. Sandberg, again, if he goes in.
Well, and Reem, those are all great assets for the Jets. I mean, let's face it, this team, I think, based on what we've seen management do this summer, has correctly identified that they have a window with this core based on the contracts that are signed. They expect that now is the time that they compete with the best. They can compete with the best in the National Hockey League and put their best foot forward and try and win the cup. And if you're doing that, often you're looking to make a big impact acquisition at the trade deadline. And if the Winnipeg Jets are healthy on the blue line and that top 6 is getting the job done and the team's winning games, there's 2 things. It is problematic for the young players without a spot to get into the lineup. But they're also very, very valuable assets when it comes to trade value, especially at the deadline. So, I know we'd all love to see these guys all, be drafted and developed and flourish into Winnipeg Jets. But if you look at the big picture and what it might take to truly compete for a cup, it might mean one of those players is a very valuable asset to get you an impact player that can come in at the trade deadline and hopefully put you over the top. So the fact that Pionk is signed for 4 years, I think first takes off the biggest concern. What is his salary going to be? He'll be part of that group going forward. And of course, now Remis, really, as we touched about, what is going to be very, very interesting is seeing how things end up playing out with Andrew Kopp. The Jets basically have right around $4 million to sign him. I believe the exact number, if I'm correct, is about 3.95. Now, there is the potential that Nate Bolio is moved or waived, and that might save him about $500,000. But again, if Andrew Kopp is looking for a long-term deal at $5 million, it doesn't seem like that is possible right now. And you do run the risk of potentially going to arbitration again, which I don't think anybody wants. Part of me thinks that there could be a 1-year deal. Maybe they just agree on a 1-year deal. They don't go through it all. And then, Kopp is incredibly motivated to have another career season going into unrestricted free agency. The other possibility is that, potentially they, do trade Andrew Kopp and recoup some assets and maybe another player that can play a similar role at some point in the bottom 6. But I really do think that Andrew Kopp's importance to this hockey club, his versatility, I don't think that they want to lose him, especially for this year. And, at some point you do lose players due to free agency and they do walk. And, you don't like to do it. From an asset management standpoint, you'd always like to capitalize and get the maximum value. But there certainly is an argument to be made that the best value for the Winnipeg Jets might be getting Andrew Kopp with 1 year left of team control on a relatively team-friendly 1-year deal, and he can go out and earn his next contract as unrestricted free agent, albeit might not be here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I agree with you, and maybe you go by what's happened in the past, where they went to arbitration and weren't able to work things out before the deadline. And they say, you know what, it's going to be tough for us to work out a long-term deal with this guy, but we need him to try to make a push this year. We're going in to win. And instead of, trading a first rounder at the deadline for a player who can help you, you just, sign Andrew Kopp to like a 4, whatever the max, a little over $4 million contract, and he can help you. He can play on the penalty kill. He can play all three forward positions. I mean, he's a great asset to have, and sometimes you got to say, you know what, we did our best, we tried, but this is we still need this guy for this year, and we don't have him for the next couple seasons. That's okay. You bring in Perfetti even this season. We'll see about Chaz Lucius. I mean, we'll be hearing about his name the next couple of years. That would be down the road, but I think Cobb, very versatile player, and seems like by who he's represented by and how it's gone in the past, he's looking for a big payday. And it's pretty clear right now, he's probably not going to get what he wants from the Jets, based on how much salary cap they have available.
We're gonna hit all of this coming up in just a minute with our good friend Murat of The Athletic. Before we do that, if you've missed the last couple shows, we've got a great new sponsor, Canadian Club, and of course the entire Beam Suntory team taking over Blue Bomber games with a cold CC. We've got the Jim Beam Stillhouse, the Brugal Rum Hut. The place will be rocking on Friday, and I can tell you, I will tease this. We have an absolutely unbelievable prize from Canadian Club, a very, very special Canadian Club product that we are going to do a contest. We're going to figure this out over the next couple days. It's a good enough thing that we don't want to just do it one day and bang off a marble race and give it away. So we'll let you know next week about that. I am, though, planning on Friday's show, we will probably have another prize. So make sure you're sticking around on the YouTube chat live with us on Friday afternoon to get in on that. But again, Canadian Club, 1858, best in the biz. If you're over beer, try a CC today. Royal Sports, we talked a lot about all the Canada women's stuff. And by the way, well, I'll let you know in a second, a couple huge guests coming up this week before the end of the week. And one will be wearing a gold medal, if you know what I'm saying. We showed you yesterday all the great Canadian soccer gear that is at Royal Sports right now for everyone that's dying to get their hands on the red and white in the aftermath of the big women's victory in Tokyo. But it's more than just soccer gear. They've got it from all around the world. NHL gear, you can safely go get your Neal Pionk jersey knowing that he signed for 4 years. Not to mention a great selection of Bomber gear and hockey, soccer, baseball, fitness, camping, bikes. They have it all. Royal Sports, 650 Rally and EK, and the Superstore, along with King's Skate, Snow, and Surf at 750 Pembina Highway. And a big shout out to our pal Nick and Nikki from the Nick and Nikki DQ group. You know them well. DQ Northgate, DQ Niverville, the DQ at Polo Park, and the DQ on St. Anne's. They've been with us since day one. Incredible sponsors. And I know many of our listeners and viewers have had a great time supporting Nick and Nikki because it's the best. Blizzards, ice cream cakes, of course, chicken, fries, and unbelievable burgers. Pop down today. Visit Nick and Nikki at any of the 4 locations and tell them your boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. If you need to order a cake, follow them on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. You'll see all the products that they've done. Hit them up and they'll have it ready, waiting for you at the location of your choice. All right, let's talk some hockey. Big news today for the Winnipeg Jets. We have the answer as to how things would work out with Neal Pionk. It's a 4-year deal at just south of $6 million per season. And to talk about it, not in his home today, no bass guitar in the background, live on location out east. Thanks so much to Murat for joining us. What's going on, pal?
Hey, Hustler. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I mean, I don't have a bass guitar in the background, but I have a comfy park here in Montreal with my mom, my niece, my nephew. We're living large here. Jets are all business. We're keeping it casual over here right now.
Well, that is fantastic. All the best. Your mom, a huge, I mean, there's got a lot of Jet fans as well, and certainly ours as well. So please give her our best from the Winnipeg Sports Talk gang and everybody in the chat and the entire family. That's wonderful to hear.
So honored for that.
And you know, even more appreciative that you're joining us today and taking a little bit of time out of your family time to join us. But big day. Let me ask you right off the bat, what was your reaction when you saw the report that Neal Pionk was signed 4 years at an AAV of less than $6 million?
Yeah, for me, this is right in line with expectations, if maybe a little bit team-friendly for the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, I believed that Neal Pionk was leaning towards a long-term deal. I was projecting long-term the entire way. My projection had it at roughly $6.0 million. That's the kind of cap number we were dealing with. But, I mean, he had the argument that, he's played top 4 minutes these last 2 seasons. He's been Winnipeg's best defenseman these past 2 seasons, got the power play time, put the point production together. I mean, he had that 6.25 figure that Josh Morrissey makes, as perhaps. And I think that he left maybe a little bit of money on the table, which makes everything better for the rest of the Winnipeg Jets teammates, Andrew Copp, everybody else who's looking to see where the pieces fall at this stage.
You know, I found it really interesting because I thought the money, I agree with you. I mean, I was expecting this number to be in excess of $6 million. But I think that the term of this deal is perfect for both the team and the player. I mean, realistically, with the deals that we've seen and the production that Neal Pionk's had as a Winnipeg Jet in 2 seasons, if you're expecting to get him at 6 or 7 or 8 years, that number was going to be well north of $6 million, I think, when you're buying that many years of unrestricted free agency. But considering the window of the team, the other contracts that this team has, it puts Neal Pionk, a Winnipeg Jet, right through this window with the Hellebuck and the Scheifele deals and the Ehlers and the other guys that are signed, and gives them a chance to do it and still maintain some semblance of order within the team's salary cap control. So, and then for Neal Pionk's his standpoint, you know, he's with the team. He obviously likes being here. He'll be here for 4 years. He gives up a couple years of unrestricted free agency, but still, you know, will be sub 30, I believe, by the time this has an opportunity to sign another deal.
Yeah, it's a great situation. I think the timing is really important for you to key in on there. With a 4-year deal and a July birthday, I think he'll be 29 and almost 30 the moment his next contract comes about. So from Winnipeg's perspective, you get the heart of this player whose career took off in the city with the Jets, getting the opportunity that he did. If you're Neal Pionk, and presumably what you do is you make it through all of this salary cap uncertainty, right? I mean, if you look at the structure of his contract, he's making less money this year because so much of it's going into escrow. And then years 2, 3, 4, he makes more strictly in a dollar sense. And that's because of the realities of the pandemic affecting the NHL, the salary cap. And likewise, if you're Neal Pionk, you're 29 hitting 30, you just had more top 4 opportunity. You put together the career that you imagined that you would in Winnipeg. Well, that next contract's in a really good spot as well. And the Jets are loaded now after 2 seasons. So much roster instability, especially on the back end. And now we can look ahead to Morrissey at term, Pionk at term, Dillon at term, Nate Schmidt at term. This team is doing everything it can to win while the horses are still here and still performing like Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Connor Hellebuck, and everything on down the line.
And, you know, when we look at Pionk's numbers, I mean, like, you know, point production wise, he has been clearly the top dog on the Winnipeg Jets. And you mentioned power play time, but I mean, I remember, you know, numerous times, both on the old station and after we started doing Winnipeg Sports Talk, talking about the fact that I would make an argument that Neal Pionk probably should have been more often out there first as the quarterback of the number 1 power play. In some ways, I think the Jets almost slow played Neal Pionk when it comes to his opportunities because, listen, when that number 2 unit, as we called it, was out there, I mean, I think, you know, I mean, you'd be able to tell me better. They were as productive as the top unit was, and Neal Pionk was a huge part of that, albeit when you maybe put out total minutes, it wasn't quite up to the top of that number 1 unit, which had Morrissey on it for most of the year.
Absolutely, especially this most recent season, right? Because when there was still a Patrick Laine on Unit 1, let's say, and Neal Pionk was making those feeds across, there was, I think, warranted criticism for the pace at which those passes came. You know, there was criticism outside the organization. I think they were kind of looking at it internally as well. You know, what's the best option to set up Patrick Laine in that situation? But Pionk was doing it well enough, getting the puck through on his own shots well enough, put together a tremendous amount of points. I think this season, the one that just happened, was tailor-made for Pionk's skill set because he doesn't necessarily have a cannon, though he shoots it pretty well. He wasn't firing those one-time passes to Patrick Laine like laser beam. But what he does exceptionally well is he gets the puck through traffic. We always say that about defensemen. I think the narrative got a little bit far on many defensemen who shoot a lot depending on what's happening. With Neal Pionk, I think there's a genuine gift, and the data would seem to bear that out. He can float a puck in for a deflection or for a rebound with consistency, and I think that the way the Winnipeg Jets run their power play now, without a single bomb in Laine or Scheifele or even Bufflin in that sort of situation, well, a player with that skill set, I think that's his opportunity, or maybe Nate Schmidt's. I mean, that's where it gets a little bit interesting if you start to project into the future.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact of the matter is we know that he can do it. If there's a better guy to do it, that's a great problem to have as a coach. if a guy is not working, you can switch it up. I mean, I think it's going to be about production right now. I mean, I've often joked with Remis that the Jets in the past have sort of operated like a union shop where there were certain guys that, had the seniority and they were always getting in that role. I have a feeling that, with the expectations and the goals for this team this year, I think top to bottom, including the forwards, but especially on the blue line, Maurice is going to have the opportunity of having a number of options of guys that are all sort of in the same salary range, the same expectations, and put forth the lineup that, he believes gives them the best chance to win every night or win a particular situation. And if it's not going, for the first time in a long time, some legitimate options to switch it up.
Yeah, imagine Josh Morrissey not going well one night. Well, hey, you can play Brendan Dillon and Neal Pionk instead, make them the heavy lifters. Or if Neal Pionk has an off night, which he hasn't had too many of, and that's why he's getting this big raise, well, then maybe you're looking at Josh Morrissey and Nate Schmidt. And if they're not going well, I mean, that third pairing of Logan Stanley and presumably Dylan DeMello, as I have it lined up, I mean, they can make hay, especially from a third pairing sort of situation as well. And I like that. I mean, Winnipeg doesn't have a presumable Norris Trophy winner or favorite on that blue line. You're not looking at it that way. But if you look in terms of its number 1 to 6, even 7, if you see Nathan Beaulieu out there, everybody's in a slot where they can handle it and they can perform. And for the first time in years since the Dustin Byfuglien era of Winnipeg, all of the problems are good problems on Winnipeg's back end, finding minutes for the right players at the right times.
Just before we get to the Andrew Kopp situation, which is the natural progression in all of this, the final domino to fall, I want to ask you, Murat, about the blue line and how you see. Well, if you had to predict who's going to be together in those pairings for game number 1, how do you see that playing? And Remis brought up Dom Lucian had an interesting piece on the best value contracts, and then he had something on the worst contracts and had Josh Morrissey's name in there. And I said this earlier on the show, you probably missed it coming on, but I really believe that, hopefully that will look like a cold take in about a year. I guess the question for you is, in addition to where you think Morrissey and Pionk will start and who they'll be playing with, how beneficial will it for Josh Morrissey to, for the first time in a couple seasons, have a partner that, can be carrying a pair in the top 4, regardless of who he's with?
Yeah, I mean, before I get into it, I think the most important thing, especially if you like looking at these projections, right? If you like the charts, if you like all this analysis, especially like what Dom puts together, there's a really important differentiation to make between quality of teammates and quality of competition. So with the Winnipeg Jets blue line, the way they run their bench, the quality of competition, players these guys play against, is pretty similar on the top 2 pairs. It falls off in a major way on the third pair. So you can say, yeah, Logan Stanley was sheltered last season, played phenomenally given his third pair role, but there's a difference in what Josh Morrissey and what Neal Pionk were going up against. When you're looking at the end of year results and you're looking at the analytics and wondering, well, does that top competition affect these guys' results? Of course it does. What affects it even more, disproportionately more, is quality of teammates, who they're playing with. So Josh Morrissey's had a tough slog these past 2 seasons, playing the same top competition he's always played, but with a rotating cast of defensemen. Tucker Pullman, I mean, I like this guy quite a bit, especially as a third pairing defenseman. But as a top pairing matchup guy, I don't think that he was able to keep up in certain ways. So if you look at this analytical output that says Josh Morrissey has not been a good defenseman the last 2 seasons, I think part of that context says, or needs to include, that he's had a really tough go of it in terms of not only the minutes he's played against, which is significant, but the minutes of the teammates that he's played with. And there have been young players, inexperienced players, etc. So my end conclusion on that is I think that Josh Morrissey does have another place to go in his game. I mean, he's not immune from it himself. It's just that if a model is going to guess wrong on a player right now, he might be one of those players that gets a little bit unfairly treated by how poor the results have been when he's on the ice. That said, who do you play him with? How do you find a good situation for him? I honestly think either of Neal Pionk or Nate Schmidt would be phenomenal partners. And we've seen Dylan DeMello being his best partner in terms of the analytics these past 2 years as well. I don't think there's such thing as a rough landing spot for Josh Morrissey, whether it's Morrissey Schmidt, Dylan Pionk, and then you sort out your third pairing. Or, I mean, Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon also, there's a lot of reasons kind of on paper why you'd think that would be a tremendous partnership, where Dillon's a stay-at-home guy and Nate Schmidt's a little bit more of what they call a riverboat gambler as well. These are good problems. There are good situations for all 6 of these guys, not just 4 to be in them.
All right, Murat of The Athletic with us here. A great piece, kind of a piece the staff put together today on the Pionk signing, as well as a very interesting convo with Brendan Dillon. We'll ask about that at the end, but let's get to Andrew Kopp because, I guess before we even get to Kopp, Murat, what does the signing today do to the Jets' salary cap, and how much money do they even have right now, considering they need to fill the roster to sign Andrew Kopp, even if they wanted to give him everything that he wanted?
Yeah, that's the number one question of the day. It's almost a bit unkind to Pionk, who we should be celebrating for his performance. But number one after his signing is what becomes of the Winnipeg Jets salary cap. And we've laid out the projections at The Athletic. We've been looking at this for a couple of weeks. And what we're looking at right now is roughly $3.9 million, most of 4 left. And what that does, because you can go to Cap Friendly, you can go to Puckpedia and play with it yourself. What this assumes is 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders. It assumes that your end of the roster players contracts make up your mind in some cases. $725K Jansen Harkins, that's the 4th liner. $750K Dominic Toninato, that's a 4th liner. I think that a player like Luke Johnson or otherwise who makes minimum $750K, that's a 13th forward type situation in this. Eric Comrie, backup job his. Contracts will determine so much of this because they make so little, league minimum salaries, that makes the maximum amount of space that we have left. That's why, a lot of folks are asking on Twitter right now, well, isn't there a way to get more than 3.9, more than $4.0 million to sign Andrew Kopp? It would take moving somebody. It would take, waiving Nathan Beaulieu. It would take a trade of, and we're really looking at a situation where if the Jets do run 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders, we're coming at 3.9, $4.0 million, and that's not a fair assessment of what Andrew Kopp is worth. So therein lies the rub. That's why everybody's going to look at these next couple of weeks with some consternation.
The conversation, the narrative around Winnipeg is that, they would look to try to do a long-term deal, and we've all been speculating on what that number would be. And that's really based on, I think Andrew Kopp's importance to the club and what the team has always tried to do in the past. And then sort of, well, if that doesn't happen, they will trade him. I'm more and more thinking, Murat, that there is a legitimate potential that Andrew Kopp is here on a 1-year deal this season. And I think both parties would like to avoid going to arbitration again. But if they realize that the money's not there for the long-term deal, they do want to have him play. They don't want to go through the nonsense of picking apart each one. They figure out a 1-year deal. And then you've got Andrew Kopp coming into a situation where he's playing for another contract. He's looking to have another career year, be incredibly motivated. And, at some point you just realize that you can't sign a guy, but the value to add to the Winnipeg Jets to have Andrew Kopp, even for one more season, playing for a new contract might be better than the value you get than selling on him right now and not having him for this season when I think they legitimately feel they can contend.
I think that there's a lot of reasons, that you just laid out why that's a viable opportunity. The one thing you can't do without further moves is sign him to big money, big term, right? So if you're buying multiple years of Andrew Kopp's free agency and he's eligible for unrestricted free agency next summer, just like you said, that's not doable without roster surgery. And to your point, the whole purpose of all of these additions, Dillon, Schmidt, bringing back Paul Stastny, all of this is about the Jets winning now. While Blake Wheeler is still a top 6 forward, Connor Hellebuck is still one of the very few best goaltenders on the planet. All of this is about now. And so could you look at Andrew Kopp on a short-term deal? Maybe it's a 1 or a 2-year deal that they sign aside from arbitration. Maybe it's they go to arbitration and that sets the price. It could be an opportunity, given all of these difficult circumstances cap-wise, for both parties to get most of what they want. Because Andrew Kopp believes in himself. If he goes to arbitration and uses that hammer, which he's elected for, and they're unable to sign a long-term deal in advance, well, that's a guaranteed 1-year deal that takes him to unrestricted free agency. That's a bet on yourself, and I believe that Andrew Kopp believes in himself. Winnipeg treating him like an own team rental. I mean, they believe in him as well. And if he plays a third-line shutdown role, if the top 6 doesn't have room for him this year, plays with Adam Lowry, gives Paul Maurice that checking line he adores, they match him up just that way, well, maybe his point totals this season aren't that 56-point pace that he put together this year, and maybe he's a more affordable signing even for the Winnipeg Jets next summer than right at this exact moment. If not, he gets unrestricted free agency during a really high peak of his career, and maybe that's big time money and dollars somewhere else as well. It's tough to imagine a situation where a player or a team loses because he's a good player that the team values.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's just the opportunity cost of, recouping assets or making some sort of a move so you don't get nothing for him. And I mean, I understand that line of thinking, but it's a little, it changes depending on where you are in your ability to compete. And, we've seen this team trade first round picks for players to come in at the trade deadline and essentially, compete going into the playoffs. So, when you think about the cost to get players like that, knowing that Andrew Kopp's already on your team, the more and more I think about it, I think that might be the end conclusion of where we end up. And from Kopp's perspective, I'm sure he'd love the security of, the money that he feels he deserves and has that long-term deal, but realizes that in the flat cap, it's just simply not available because of how things have shaken out. And I'll tell you what, to your point, he had a great season points-wise, and even if the points aren't there, maybe the best way to boost your value as an unrestricted free agent is be a dominant player in both ends in a nice, long Stanley Cup playoff run, and that's the goal of everyone. And if that went for Andrew Kopp, it could actually work out as maybe the best-case scenario for the next deal that he signs.
Well, when does the myth-making begin in the NHL, right? It's when you go on those playoff runs. You look at Tampa Bay's depth players. You look at the rising status of Ben Sherratt and Joel Edmondson because of what Montreal's blue line was able to do, taking them to the Stanley Cup final. I mean, I think that the myth-making, the greatness legends, the what establishes a legacy is the small sample that is the Stanley Cup playoff because it's the most important time of year. And, I mean, those players get paid. A depth player on a Stanley Cup champion, not saying that Winnipeg is, a top 3 or 5 favorite to win the cup necessarily, but a depth player on a Stanley Cup champion gets a contract premium. Success breeds success in terms of those contract dollars. And I mean, I guess what I'm doing is I'm nodding my head and I'm saying, as much as I believed, perhaps in advance of the NHL draft, there was room for Andrew Kopp to be moved for futures, for multiple draft picks, all those sorts of things. The price was never right. Draft picks were hard to come by at that time. This is a player that, from where we sit today, can only help the Winnipeg Jets. And if he helps the Winnipeg Jets, he can only help himself get paid next summer or this if they somehow find that squeeze.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, if the Jets still evaluated the situation and knowing how important it is for them to maintain their assets or get something for them, decide that, okay, we're going to make that trade at some point this summer, what are they looking to get back? What makes sense to get back? And I mean, you still have to worry about this salary cap number that, I mean, presumably maybe you get a pick and a lesser player, but does that make you better? Does that give you a better chance to win this year? I'm not sure. If a trade was made, well, what do you think the Jets would be looking for? What would make sense for the team to actually pull the trigger and, not suck it up and, enjoy one more year of Andrew Kopp and take your chances next year on the open market?
For me, my starting point is how I believe Paul Maurice will run his bench and try to get his version of the most out of the Winnipeg Jets, because we have a track record. We have a top 6, that involves sometimes multiple centers on the same line. We have that Blake Wheeler, Kyle Connor, Nick Ehlers, Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Paul Stastny, who are top 6 players in that mold. We know that the best team that Paul Maurice ever coached, the 2017-18 Winnipeg Jets, that were, in the Final Four and were a genuine Stanley Cup contender at that moment, involved a really strong usage of that checking line. So Andrew Kopp, the way that I have him sized up on the Winnipeg Jets is with Adam Lowry on that third line, sometimes being bumped ahead if maybe Pierre-Luc Dubois struggles or what have you, but that's his wheelhouse. So the best case scenario, if you're looking at the opportunity cost, especially when the defense is set and Connor Hellebuck is in goal, is a player that plays precisely his role. Perhaps not quite as well, maybe without the offense, but who can really shut things down on that third line alongside Adam Lowry, and just perhaps a player earlier on in his career that can do some of the same things for less money so that you can fit that underneath the cap. At the same time, and this because I can't find a reason why they're going to spend big money on a backup goaltender or big money on another defenseman. That said, it's really about forwards. I don't see room in the top six. It's got to be there. And that might be why it's safe to move Andrew Kopp if his value is reduced to that third line sort of situation. The opportunity cost is less than if Winnipeg played a more balanced top nine more frequently. The other thing that I think of is the Jets cap situation, where with Brian Little certainly headed to long-term injured reserve, staying underneath the cap for a long period of time this year, it doesn't accrue anything. It doesn't build up anything. You can't turn that into big dollars at the trade deadline. It just is what it is. And that's another reason why, Andrew Kopp may be, I guess I'm going against myself here, but maybe safe as a third line player, a case for the own rental in this situation.
Yeah, no, I mean, the more I think about it, and, obviously we needed to learn a lot more. I mean, number one, what the Stanley deal was and what the Pionk was. But now that we have it and we realize, I mean, I'm not used to going to Cap Friendly and seeing a red 0 in cap space beside the Winnipeg Jets. And, that will change when Brian Little gets put onto the LTIR. But the bottom line is there is not a lot of wiggle room right now with the club. And it would seem, based on logical expectations from the Kopp camp on a long-term deal, that, as you mentioned, Murat, I mean, unless you're moving somebody else out to make that commitment, the numbers just simply don't work right now.
Yeah, the only thing that I can think of, and so let's talk about options to move players out. If you waive Nathan Beaulieu and he's claimed, you can replace him with, a league minimum defenseman, whether it's Nelson Nogier in-house or somehow else, which saves approximately $500,000 off the cap. So suddenly, Andrew Kopp's 3.9 might become 4.3, 4.4 kind of situation. If he passes through and makes it all the way to the AHL, the savings are less. I'm not imagining that the Winnipeg Jets are about to trade Dylan DeMello despite his contract value on the third pair. These kinds of deals I don't see. Are the Jets able to get a pick back for Nathan Beaulieu? And is that enough? So that's where I imagine. And it's not that big of a safety valve. Like it used to be, you always imagined maybe the Jets would move Matthew Perreault. Every fan was like, okay, the Jets can add more salary here, but Matthew Perreault's $4 million. Well, we'll get rid of that. Everything will be fine. There's no big ticket contract to get rid of that just makes everything work. So the only other thing I'm left with, and this happened in Winnipeg's favor, unfortunate for the player, but in Winnipeg's favor heading into this season, we were all anticipating Brian Little was going to LTIR. We didn't anticipate Dominic Toninato. And we know that he had I believe it was long. Well, I won't speculate. I can't remember what this situation is with Dominic Toninato's illness, but he was unable to play to start the season. And if there is another player, unfortunate, and you don't wish this upon anyone, but who has, something nagging or some operation to get done or something to do that allows Winnipeg to get a little bit more long-term injured reserve relief, there's a little bit more savings there that you could use for Andrew Kopp. Of course, that becomes a problem as soon as you want to bring that player back onto the team as well. So, I mean, we're talking about the nitty gritty because we're down to dollars, we're down to cents. That's the amount of room left in Winnipeg to make sure that Andrew Kopp is a Winnipeg Jet this season.
Murat always seems to bring them out. Great to see so many people with us live today on YouTube. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Make sure you hit that red subscribe button and join us on a daily basis. And if you would be so kind, hit that thumbs up button. We could certainly use the likes. Remo actually just threw in the social links in the chat too, if you want to make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram. And for the folks that are listening on the podcast, any opportunity you get to give us a 5-star rating and a little review certainly helps us grow the pod as well. Murat, this has been a great conversation. I cannot have you on the program without plugging the very interesting and entertaining Q&A you had with Brendan Dillon. What was that like? Give people a little bit of an idea of what they'll see in The Athletic if they haven't read it already.
I mean, you got to read this one. Brendan Dillon is a funny, entertaining, engaging man. He won points with me immediately by pronouncing my name correctly. I guess he had prepared himself for the interview. So, he was calling me Murat with the proper A sound. And I was thinking to myself, well, how did you do that? That was a good start. But beyond that, I mean, we're laughing about, his mom's charitable contributions. She was working with a quilting society to help out Humboldt, which is a really fascinating angle. On ice, we were talking about how he was a late bloomer. I mean, this guy was 5'2" when he was passed over in the WHL draft. So he knows what it's like to be too small for the league. as well as to be a 6'4", 225-pound player who can bully players in the corners. And he reflected on that, what it's meant to his career, a blessing in disguise, and all the things that he was able to learn from that as well, in terms of, in using his words, becoming the best Brendan Dillon that he can be and the best Winnipeg Jet that he can be. I think it's a good interview thanks to him, and it's an exciting addition to the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, aside from the, we've had the chance to hear from Nate Schmidt, and we had a great one-on-one with Brendan Dillon here on the program a couple of weeks back after he signed. As much as I think everyone is excited to see what these guys can do on the ice, I'm also genuinely excited about what these guys bring to the makeup of the team and the dressing room and their characters there, especially considering how respected they are, the roles that they'll play, the fact that they were brought in from other teams. That sort of a change and sort of a boost can help the team in a lot of ways more than just on the ice.
Yeah, I think it's been a serious dressing room for the last little while, especially, sorry, you got some sirens in the background. I mean, we've got a serious dressing room, especially with the absence of Dustin Byfuglien. And what I like the most about this, good character additions of Schmidt, Dillon, Paul Stastny, bringing to be brought back, is there's this really nice confluence of phenomenal human beings who play well. We're talking about top 6 forwards and top 4 NHL defensemen, so that, they're not just some goofball in the corner of the room. They come with a tremendous amount of respect for what they do on the ice, off the ice, all these things as well. And I like that. For the Jets, but also for guys like you and me who talk to these guys who are just great to interview and a good time and engaging in all these sorts of situations.
Murat, when are you back in the peg? What's on the tap for the rest of the weekend now that we're taking you from your family? Thanks again so much for doing this, by the way.
My pleasure. I love talking with you. So, I got to write this up. We got to do the deep dive and set up the Andrew Copp situation on paper, just like we did, and show the numbers, show the charts, all those sorts of stuff, because that's obviously the next major domino to follow. See what other interviews we can line up as well. Q&A style. We had Brendan Dillon, and then, of course, Dylan DeMello with the great one last week, talking about what it was like to be exposed. But also, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off, I think, starting next week, actually hang out with the family and keep playing with niece and nephew. And I got to say, this is my last, I ramble for every, or at least I say a lot of words for every response that I give you. There's a 2-year-old, a trilingual 2-year-old in Montreal somewhere who's playing these mini 6 passes on the tape, time in and time out. So, if anybody wants to get an early start on that story, just, I know it's agent, just saying.
I can't wait for the prospect report coming up in The Athletic at some point very soon. Hey, listen, Murat, give your mom our best and the entire family. Thank you very much for doing this. And we'll look forward to more of your great coverage of the Winnipeg Jets in the National Hockey League in The Athletic. And we'll, of course, be following you on Twitter at WPG Murat and looking forward to the notification that the next piece of Jets content is coming out. Thanks so much for doing this, buddy. Have a great time out there.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me.
There he is, the one and only Murat Atesh, very popular with Jet fans and certainly popular in the chat. Just a real great conversation with Murat on the Neal Pionk signing today, what that means for the Winnipeg Jets, their cap situation going into the final domino of the summer. What happens with Andrew Copp? Can they get a deal done before arbitration? That arbitration date is 2 weeks tomorrow, the 26th of August. All right, still to come on the program is Winnipeg Blue Bomber quarterback Zach Collaros. We'll have that coming up in just a couple minutes. Before we do that, do want to thank one of our other newest sponsors, Paramount Services Limited, for jumping on board with Winnipeg Sports Talk. Paramount Services Limited, a full service facility maintenance company serving commercial HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and handyman services to all of your favorite convenience stores and restaurants, not just here in Manitoba, but in Western Canada, 24 hours a day, 365 days for over 28 years. If you're needing kitchen or cooler supplies for a convenience store or restaurant, give anywhere in Western Canada, give our friend Kerry O'Brien a visit or on the website at Paramount Services Ltd for more information. And in addition, to be able to take all of your care of all your needs if you're in the business, if you have HVAC experience, plumbing, electrical, handiwork, they're always looking for qualified individuals. And just so you know, they're also members of the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local Union 254. So if you're thinking about maybe a job change, looking for a great company and a great place to work, Find out more about Paramount Services on the career page. You can go to our sponsor page, click their logo, and it'll take you right there, or check them out online at Paramount Services Ltd. Not AutoCorp, they keep on rolling, man. Every day I see something come up on their Instagram page of another beautiful car going off the lot. If you are thinking about making a move and getting into the car of your dreams at a great price, why not do it with the Not team over at Waverly and McGillivray? And it's so much more than vehicle sales. They've got an incredible service department with Red Seal technicians. They'll detail it. And of course, the Car Lab coming up for those of you that like to trick around modifications and all of that. There is one spot you need to go before you do anything when it comes to your vehicle, and that's Not AutoCorp. Visit them at Waverly and McGillivray or check them out online at not.ca. And I mentioned yesterday, I was back at Boston Pizza. I've been at BP quite a bit lately. We had that great Blue Jays event for the homecoming game 2 Fridays ago. And it was just from a personal level, it was so great to be back down at Boston Pizza City Place, where we spent so many nights getting ready for Winnipeg Jet games. Crystal and the staff there always take such good care of us. And right now, the Summer's Here menu is in full effect. The Burger Italiano, the Honey Dill Fried Chicken Sandwich. And if you're getting out onto one of the Boston Pizza patios with some friends, you can bring the sunglasses and try the White Sangria Smash, the Bulldog Margarita Fishbowl, the Galaxy Fishbowl, or the Peachy Mojito Royale. Summer's here. Bring your appetite. Sunglasses optional at your local Boston Pizza. All right. Zach Collaros coming up. Let's get Michael Remis back in here in a moment. And one other thing. Speaking of Zach Collaros, very excited to have the Bomber quarterback coming up on the program. And Remo, while you join us, a great announcement coming up on Friday on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We will be welcoming in Winnipeg's gold medalist, Desiree Scott, from the Canadian Olympic gold medal winning women's soccer team. Anyone that's been watching this program for the last few weeks knows how emotionally invested I personally was in the event, and I think that sort of caught fire throughout the country going into the incredible gold medal win. And it's going to be so much fun to have Des on it. So make sure you're here on Friday. You can give her your well wishes when she joins us live on Friday's show. But before we get to Zach Collaros, Remo, some great stuff with Murat. You knew there'd be a lot of people interested in a big boost today with the people watching live because Jets News brings people live to Winnipeg Sports Talk. And it was just great for Murat to take the time to join us from Montreal.
Yes, we did a good test before to make sure it worked from the park he was at. He was concerned about outside noise. I had a good laugh at the end when the fire engine went by, but you could definitely hear him loud and clear. Some people joked in chat that it was his hot fire Jets takes. They had to call the fire department to get him. He was just too nailing what the Jets are trying to do. So I think it's great signing for Pionk, but I think Murat's joke too. You know, we're talking about Pionk, instead of talking about the Pionk signing, the next topic, we're fast forwarding right away. Okay, what happens with Kopp? How much do you fit him? And what does it mean for them? So, but as far as Pionk goes, I mean, you mentioned that his power play stats were better than Morrissey's. And it's interesting to me, you look at, the just rate stats per minute. I mean, Pionk and Ehlers, much more efficient on the power play than the Morrissey, Shafley, Wheeler, Connor combo. Do they try to mix things up this year and get Ehlers more ice time? I tweeted yesterday that they should definitely try, and a lot of people were in agreement. I'd like to see Ehlers, Pionk, PP1, or does Nate Schmidt now make an impact on the power play as well? Those are some things I think we're going to be watching, but I mean, Ehlers, I was looking at his stats yesterday. I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but he had like one less point than Shafley in half as many minutes. So, we'd like to see him get some more power play time, but that's another topic I think for another.
It is, but
day.
You know what? I kind of referred to that with Murat, and I really do think that, and I joke about the place was a union shop and it was always the veterans that were going on. And, there's a little bit of truth to that. I mean, Coach Paul Maurice and many coaches do have their tendencies. But, we've seen it before at other times where this team was on the precipice of, winning or in the playoffs where, he would ride the guys that are working. I just think that with the goals that this team is going to have after what Kevin Cheveldayoff's done this offseason, I think that playing time, power play, all of those things are going to be more up for grabs, and there'll be a more competitive nature. And I think that's only going to be good for the hockey team going forward. And if it is an open competition, as you just mentioned, Remo, it's going to be pretty damn hard to keep 27 off that top unit and maybe even off the top line, depending on how the ice time is doled out by the coach.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty clear that he is an elite player, and it's time for him to get those elite power play 1 minutes and some more top play minutes. So I think that's something to watch going forward. And, hey, if you can get him a discount in your fantasy draft, I think he's prime for yet another. It seems like he's breaking out every year, but I mean, with increased ice time, you'd think comes increased production for him. So I think that's something to watch as we hit training camp. What are the lines going to be? I think that's at least a month away from that.
Bravo, Bri. Pionk should be our PP1 D-man on the rear corner. Fight me if you disagree. No one wants to mess with Bravo Bri. Yeah. That is
what
for sure.
What about Pionk Buster Parfaits? Is DQ going to come out with those? Someone wrote that in chat.
Listening. That's outstanding. I will pass that on. To Nick and Nikki and see what they can do. Andrew Holeko in the chat says the Jets need to move Nico $750 to get close to paying Kopp what he's worth. Here's the issue, Andrew. If you move Nico, you still need another player, assuming that he's on the roster, filling out the roster at league minimum salary. So if you're moving a player at minimum, I mean, you're not just going to have an empty spot on the roster. You will have a player there. So it doesn't really help you very much. I mean, Nate Beaulieu is the one guy with the $1.25 million. If you moved him and had that spot taken up by like a Sammy Niku at $750K, you've got $500,000 of savings. If you can move the contract, that remains to be seen. So that certainly is an option. But honestly, and Rem, I don't know where you're at with this after the conversation with Murat, but the more I think about this after seeing the Neal Pionk contract, I'm less thinking that Andrew Kopp will be traded, but I'm also less thinking that there will be any sort of a long-term deal. And he could be sort of the one guy that unfortunately gets squeezed into a one-year deal playing for another contract that might not be with the Winnipeg Jets next season.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, he did have a career year last year. You'd think he'd want to capitalize, but it's pretty clear right now the Jets don't have the room to pay him. So do they give him a one-year deal and then let him walk, or does he want to take a long-term? I saw people in chat saying, oh, Kopp retweeted about the Pionk signing. What does that mean? What can we take from Andrew Kopp retweeting that his teammate signed a deal? Does it mean that Kopp says, where's the money for me? Does it mean that he's pumped about the future of the team? So many things that we can try to infer from Andrew Kopp's retweet. I don't know where you stand on this one.
I'll have to do more investigation just to retweet. Well, I would take it that he's happy for his teammate, that he got the deal, and now he wants a deal too, and he wants to get back and go to work. And who knows? I mean, it's a one-year deal that's on the table for potential arbitration. Maybe they can work out at like a 2-year deal that makes sense, that gives Andrew Kopp a couple years to compete for a cup, hopefully with the Winnipeg Jets, and then, break the bank on a deal that might be the one long-term that he signs over the course of his career. I'm really not sure. We'll talk about it with Mike McIntyre and Ken Wiebe and some of the other guys over the next week or so. And of course, that key date that I think everyone hopes that we don't get to is August 26th. For the Winnipeg Jets and Andrew Kopp, as Remis said, the main event of arbitration, the final match coming up 2 Thursdays from now. All right, we are going to take a quick. We're going to talk some football. We got the Bombers and the Toronto Argonauts going at it, a battle of 1-0 teams Friday night at IG Field, and a little bit before the show was able to catch up with the quarterback of the Blue Bombers, Zach Collaros, to talk about the big win in week number 1, heading into week number 2, and just how he's feeling now, with the comfort of a training camp behind him, not to mention a Grey Cup ring, despite starting only 5 games right now as we speak for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So just from a little earlier, here's our conversation with Blue Bomber QB, Zach Collaros. Zach, what's going on? Thanks so much for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. Just got through a little film session there, so.
Yeah, getting ready for the Argos and a battle of 1-0 teams. Hey, before we talk about the game coming up on Friday at IG Field, congratulations on game number 1. Before we even talk about the win and what happened on the field, Tell us what it was like coming out of the tunnel in front of 30,000 fans, seeing that Grey Cup banner go up, and just have the opportunity to get back doing what you and your teammates love to do.
Yeah, it was great. It was great for the organization. It was great for the players. Obviously, I thought it was great for the province and for the country in general. Just to have the CFL back. It was an amazing experience there, right out in front of our home fans, and the entire leading up to the game in the first quarter. Even I feel like none of us could catch our breath because we were so excited, and our adrenaline was pumping. We hadn't done it in so long, so something I'll definitely never forget. And really happy with the way that we played and came out with a victory. And can't say enough good things about our fans and the energy that they brought to the stadium.
What was it like in the dressing room leading up to that game? This had been such a long time coming, and I imagine for a lot of you, many of you wondered whether this would actually even ever happen.
Yeah, there was definitely an energy there, as there always is before a game. But I'd heard a lot of conversations going on, like, hey, just try to relax, because everybody was so amped up to get out there on the field, and myself included. It was definitely a special night and a weird one at the same time, because, again, we hadn't done it in a long time, but it was awesome.
Well, and the team went out and took care of business with a huge win against a very, very good football team. I have to ask you, though, about training camp overall, Zach. I mean, you have this incredibly long period, an unprecedented period where you guys are off the field. You come back, and the time was there, but there was no action. That even that scrimmage that was planned in Saskatchewan didn't take place. You had no preseason games. How different was this training camp, shall I ask you, from as opposed to anyone you've ever been in your professional career?
It was very different. Leading up to it, you still really weren't sure if it was real. If this was actually going to happen until I feel like it was a couple of weeks before training camp actually started. So between that and then having to do the quarantine at the hotel for 7 days, just kind of being isolated in your own room, that was certainly different than anything that we have experienced, and just doing the Zoom meetings. Was there some benefit to that? Probably, because we got to do the install 2 times, from an offensive standpoint for the players. But yeah, it was different. It was a different training camp. I'll be honest with you, there's still some guys on the defensive side that I look and I'm like, I don't know who this is, because you weren't really able to interact with both sides of the football. Even eating lunch and dinner was obviously different than what everybody's dealing with in the world. It's kind of the predicament that we're in as a society. So it was different.
Well, you're a championship squad coming back. I mean, Mike O'Shea pretty much laid out the all business mantra of this club right from the beginning of the training camp, and we certainly saw it on the field. What did you think of the win over Hamilton? And in specific, what did you like about the offensive performance in game number 1?
I thought it was a good win. Anytime you can win in this league, it's a great thing. So it's not easy to do. There's a lot of preparation goes into it, and to have that come to fruition, it's always great. I thought offensively we were physical first and foremost, and that's really what we wanted to accomplish, to set the tone physically, and starts up front, and our offensive line did a great job of that. I think there's definitely things that we can clean up on the outside, on the inside as well. That starts with me as the quarterback, and we'll continue to get better at those. Obviously with the short training camp and no preseason games, that was kind of our first real action. So there's going to be mistakes, but we'll continue to get those things and hopefully execute level moving forward.
Well, and speaking of being physical, I mean, we spent 18 months talking about the Grey Cup game and how the Blue Bombers just physically dominated on both sides of the line of scrimmage. As a quarterback, how much confidence does it give you and the entire team knowing that you're going up and getting the ball from the best offensive line in the Canadian Football League?
I think it's great for, not just me, but like you said, the entire team. They set the tone physically, right from the get-go, and let our teams know what we're about. And that's not just our offensive line; it's our defensive line as well. It's something that's kind of baked into the culture here, is that we want to be physical, and the guys take it serious. And it definitely filters its way out into the receiving core, into the running backs, and it's great for our offense, great for me as a quarterback, because it allows you to do other things, because the other team has to be worried about the run and that physicality.
Well, and I mean, I think of the fourth quarter in particular when you're playing with the lead, the defense is playing very strong. You get the ball and, you're able to give the ball to a rookie running back who's moving the chains every time. I mean, it obviously speaks to what Brady Oliveira was able to do. But to have an offensive line that can step up and dominate a game and, maintain the possession of the ball, it's just huge. Hard to imagine, that second half, the way things went for you guys when you didn't need to score points. What you needed to do was just finish the team off, and the way that took place in quarter four.
Yeah, I mean, you always work on that in training camp and in situational football, that 4-minute drill where you want to run the clock out. So yeah, being able to do that is huge. You would have obviously liked to score a touchdown there at the end of the game rather than kick a field goal. We took a penalty there and that set us back. But yeah, it was a great performance. Something again you always want to do is you want to end the game with the ball in your hands, and we were able to get into the victory formation there and do that.
Zach Collaros with us here in Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Tickets available Friday night, blue and gold against the double blue of the Toronto Argonauts. Zach, I have to ask, you're coming to Winnipeg and winning a Grey Cup is one of the most storybook and sort of crazy stories. I mean, you started one game at Winnipeg's at the IG Field and then went on a run on the road. I mean, for many Bomber fans, that was their first time to actually get a chance to see you in person playing at IG Field if they weren't at that final game of the 2019 season. Does it feel like home now? Do you feel at home as a Bomber now that you've got your Grey Cup ring and knowing you're getting back at it with this club?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great group, so they're very welcoming. Obviously from playing game standpoint, I hadn't been here for a long time, but I really did feel like I was one of the guys in the locker room. And then keeping in touch with people over the off season, an extended off season, and then getting back at it. It felt like home.
I always remember, the Grey Cup win, the celebration downtown Winnipeg. It was such a magical period of time, and then everyone went their separate ways. Like, what was those few weeks afterwards? You got home, you're a Grey Cup champ. I mean, did you ever think back, like, the last 2 months almost seems like a dream? Like, how the heck did all this happen and come together the way it did?
Yeah, I don't think I really sat back and thought about it until the whole pandemic, started, because, we came home after the parade. We had an ultrasound. I think it was my wife's first ultrasound. So, went and got that done. And then it was a lot of traveling, for Thanksgiving and Christmas and, all those different things, for me wanting to get back to see my family. So we never really had a chance to sit down and kind of, again, talk about it and think about it. It was just, we're going from this party to this party to this party to say hello to this person. And yeah. And then by that time, we were all supposed to, bring the Grey Cup, back to our hometowns or whatever, the pandemic started. So yeah, that was different, but yes, that was a time that my wife and I, at least, or my parents and I, could sit around and talk about, how cool that was, not for me personally, but for our team. And I'm sure for the fans, OSHA's kind of a storybook kind of thing. But again, it speaks to the culture here in the organization. And, it's not just the quarterback that wins games. There's a lot of great football players on our team, and it takes a total team effort. And that's what we had happen, and it's just so happy we won the Grey Cup.
Well, and you saw how much that resonates within this city, last Friday night or a Thursday night, and we'll feel it again when you guys take the field against the Toronto Argonauts. There are some pretty significant changes on the offense, and certainly from the quarterback position. No Chris Streveler, who was such a sort of a unicorn with the way he was able to run the football and basically a human battering ram in that you guys would switch out. And of course, offensive coordinator Paul Lapalisse is gone. Tell us about working with Buck Pierce and how things have gone so far with the new offense that you and Buck are sort of in charge of taking into 2021.
Yeah, Buck's been amazing. Amazing to work with since day one, even when I first got back here, and he was the, just the quarterback coach, pass game coordinator. He's been a great person to lean on and talk about the offense with, and, obviously carrying it over now with Lapo being in Ottawa and talk with him throughout the offseason about what he wants to accomplish offensively, from a philosophical standpoint and from a tempo standpoint. That was great. And then, being able to come here and, go into a full training camp with him has been great for me personally. So yeah, he's been great to work with. He's an easy guy to communicate with. He does a great job of communicating, to the receivers, to the offensive line. to the running backs. I think it's easy for him because he played the quarterback position and he's always kind of been in that leadership role. Mix that with humility and guys really respect him and listen to what he has to say. And it's been great so far. I look forward every morning coming to work and working with him and just talking ball and what we can do this week to attack the defense and to score points.
I still think back and talk with friends about the run to the Grey Cup, and anyone that knows what it's like to play football at that level, the amount of preparation, the amount of information that a quarterback needs to go about the offense, I think made what has happened over the course of 4 games that much more impressive because of how little time that you had to learn everything. I have to ask you how much more comfortable you are just in general with your situation and the offense right now, having had this amount of time and having had a full training camp with your teammates going into last week's opener.
Yeah, I think my comfort level is obviously a little better than it was, for that game because I wasn't able to, really learn everything from the beginning. Obviously having a full training camp now, there's little nuanced, terms that we have in our offense. Now I know the reason why they're called that and what we're actually trying to accomplish, rather than just, getting a 200 play game plan and memorizing that for this week against Calgary or this week against Saskatchewan, which is what I was kind of, doing there at the end of the year. Being able to start from scratch, learn the ins and outs of why we do things here has been great. And it's made things a lot easier for me from a communication standpoint with the coaching staff, as well as with the receivers, because our receivers have been here for a while too. So they speak the Winnipeg offensive terminology language, right? When I came last year, I was calling things what I'd called them in Hamilton, from 4 years ago, or in Saskatchewan, because, we call this route this, and then you guys call it this. So I'm just trying to be like, hey, you need to run that 1 and 8 and come in. What do we call that? Oh, we call that boost. Okay, we call it bucks here. Like, what I'm saying? Like that kind of stuff. It's just made my life a lot easier from that standpoint. And anytime, again, going back to starting from scratch, anytime the why of why we called this play this and what we're looking for, I think it makes the quarterback's job easier. I think it makes everybody's job easier. So we always try to tell, even the receivers, know what the concept is and what we're trying to accomplish here, and it'll make everything better and easier for you too.
Speaking of receivers, we're looking forward to getting Darvin Adams back in the lineup at some point soon. I mean, he certainly makes a huge difference as a real legitimate deep threat. But Kenny Lawler's looking good. You got Nick Dembski coming into his own. I mean, what do you make of the performance of those guys that you're working with every day and the way they balled out in game number 1?
Yeah, it's just a great group of people. Kenny, obviously, his tangible stuff is off the charts, but I thought he had a great training camp as well, just from a leadership standpoint, being in that room and understanding our offense and being able to communicate that with guys. Everybody knows how great Nick Dembski is. And Drew Olatarski, those 2 guys for me are kind of, like security blankets out there, and they know the offense probably better than I do. So, anytime I see something, I can kind of look at them and be like, hey, let's do it this way. And they know exactly what I'm talking about. And, it makes the quarterback's job, a lot easier. Rasheed Bailey, came on down the stretch for us last year and had a great training camp, had a great week 1. Love his energy that he brings out there. And who else do we have? Who's to the field out there? We had Charles last week, and so Charles is very dynamic with the ball in his hands. A guy who's been here for quite a while too and knows the offense, so he's going to continue to get better. We got some young guys too, so it's a great group of athletes, guys that want to be great. And like I said, I just got done staying after with those guys for an hour just to break down a little bit of what we did at practice and what we can do this week against Toronto. So they're an eager group, and it's a fun group to work with because they want to be great.
You made a number of plays with your feet as well. I'm just wondering about your viewpoint on, how much you want to run. Are you getting out of the pocket to create more passing plays? And how important is it to be able to run the football, but also to to get down to make sure you're not taking any extra hits?
Yeah, I don't want to run the football. I've always been more of a to improvise to get the ball to the receiver. I think last week I had one run there where it just everything kind of split in front of me, and there was a lane there, so I took it. But generally, I think the quarterback should not be the person running the ball. Should be the guy who moves around a little bit and gets guys open and allows for some extra time there. So it's nothing you really think about going into a game like, hey, I need to drop back take off 3 or 4 times. But I think between the rustiness of not playing for 2 years and dropping my eyes and just trying to get outside the pocket, because it's always something that I've reverted to, because I've been decent at it in my career of improvising there on the run. Mix that with some of the things that Hamilton was doing. It worked out for us, and our receivers did a great job of continuing to work. So it's not easy to do.
Zach Collaros with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Zach, before we go, got to ask you about the game on Friday. Now you've been spending a lot of time looking at the tape. Pretty impressive performance by Toronto going into Calgary to win their opening game. A ton of new faces on that defense. What are you and the offense up against on Friday?
Yeah, it was definitely a big win for their organization. The defensively, they get after the passer very well. I think obviously there's a lot of new faces in the secondary, but they've got some guys with CFL experience. They know how to play the game. They do a good job of route reading and playing man coverage, and that's what you want to do in this league. So it's going to be a huge challenge for us. Obviously, they played very well against Calgary, and we're going to have to put our best foot forward and hope that we can get a win.
Hey, last one for you, and thanks so much for doing this.
No problem.
Before you got here, for 29 freaking years, we were talking about the fact that the team hadn't won the Grey Cup, and it was almost like it was just a running narrative about how things would go wrong, and many fans thought that the team was cursed. You come in and the team wins a championship. You have the great celebration. And we've talked about that all, but for your team right now, what is the fact that you guys were able to win and bring back so many of those players from a championship squad going into this season do? I mean, does that make you guys more prepared for what's to come right now? Does it give you more of a sense of defending what you have earned? Or is all of that nice to have, but none of it really matters because you got to go out and win battles every single game when you take the field?
Yeah, I think what you said at the end, we've tried to embrace that. We're a new football team this year. We have a lot of guys that have come back from that team, but every week's going to be different. And, our goal is to go 1-0 every week. So there hasn't been a lot of conversation about last year or 2 years ago, if any, really, except for, just kind of BS in the locker room. Like, hey, remember this or what we did after this game, kind of thing. The celebration was awesome, I must say. that parade that Winnipeg put on was just amazing. I didn't know what to expect, and that was just incredible. But yeah, to answer your question, there hasn't been a ton of talk about that. Obviously it's an amazing thing that we accomplish as a team and accomplish as a city here and as a fan base. And, we're very grateful to have done that. But this is a new year. Every team's different, and, we're really locked in on taking it day by day to try to beat the opponent that's in front of us. And, this week it's Toronto. And again, we're hoping we can play our best game to get a W.
Well, I know the fans are, it was a long time coming to get back to the park last Thursday. Luckily, the wait was only 8 days before seeing you and your teammates go at it again. Zach, all the best. Thanks so much for doing this. Good luck on Friday night, and hopefully we can do this again later on the summer.
For sure. Thanks for having me on, and have a good one.
All right, that was great stuff with Zach Collaros. Thanks so much to the Bomber quarterback for joining us. Again, Bombers, Argos, Friday night, IG Field. Tickets on sale now. Get out there, get your butt in the seat at the stadium. I will be there, and I will have koozies with me again. So if you missed me at the first game, looking to see if you can score one of those Winnipeg Sports Talk koozies, I will have them. Get there early. They were all gone by about 6:45 last game. But anyways, really looking forward to that. Thanks again to Zach for joining us, and thanks to DC and the gang for helping us arrange it. All right, Asa Rehman coming up in just a second. Do want to thank Little Brown Jug for their sponsorship and partnership here with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. If you have not yet already tried the flagship 1919 or the incredible summer beers, including the Summer Lager and the Hefeweizen as part of the Summer Variety Pack, what are you waiting for? And you don't even have to leave the house. You can get it delivered directly to your home. Same-day delivery if you order by 4. And you can do that online at littlebrownjug.ca. And with the restrictions loosened, another great spot to go and get it right from the tap, if you will, at Little Brown Jug. The brewery and patio is there on William Avenue. It's just a great spot if you haven't been there already. Make a point next time you're getting together with friends to maybe pop down and enjoy Little Brown Jug at Little Brown Jug at the headquarters on William Avenue. We've got live racing again tonight at Assiniboia Downs. Remis and I will have our picks at the end of the day. Did manage to squeeze a little bit out of last night. A nice parlay that basically got me, a quinella, excuse me, using the horse racing vernacular correctly, that got me to about even. But we really dug in for these picks tonight, so we're looking forward to that. Some of our favorite horses are back, including Otani. We'll hit that at the end. But if you're thinking about getting out, you can do it. Double vaxxed. You got to show your ID, much like you do to go to a Goldeye game or a Bomber game. 50% capacity on the main level and outdoors. And upstairs, VLTs are open from 9 until 12:15 every day, as is the terrace dining room. But you're going to want to make a reservation for the terrace dining room. You can do that by calling Assiniboia Downs or find out more at asdowns.com. And don't forget tonight, with all the live racing getting going at 7:30, 6:45, Kirk and Stretch will break it all down for you. And Remis and I both had a lot of fun betting on the races on hpibet.com from our homes, and watching all the action on the Assiniboia Downs live YouTube page. And many people with us on YouTube probably seen the guys in here on the regular as well, interacting with us. Definitely check that out if you're looking to make a few wagers tonight for the track. But if not, get out there and do it in person. There's nothing like being at the track. And a big thanks to Breezy Bend Country Club. And I do have to make a special congratulations, because Garth Collings is now the Manitoba senior champion. And I was talking with Corey over at Breezy. They always love to be the home of the champions, with so many great players coming out of their junior program, the Mundy Putter, although credit to Elmhurst for winning it this year. But I texted back, I'm like, is Garth Collings the GOAT of Manitoba golf? And I think he is the most decorated Manitoba amateur golfer of all time. 3-time Manitoba amateur champ, 6-time Manitoba mid-amateur champion, now 3-time Manitoba senior champion, and 2-time Manitoba match play champion. He was the 2003 Canadian mid-amateur champion and the 2003 Canadian Club Champions champion, and is the 5-time Manitoba Golfer of the Year. So shout out to our friends at Breezy Bend, and a special congratulations to the great Garth Collings, who just keeps winning here in the province of Manitoba. If you're thinking about a great spot to golf for you and your family next year, get on the waiting list, call Corey Johnson over at Breezy Bend, or find out more at breezybend.ca. All right, we've got a great Coolbet tip for you, the Lock Shop Boosted Parlay. I'll tell you about that a little bit later on. But, we've got Des Scott coming on the program on Friday. I am so excited to have her on. And as we continue to bask in the glory of the gold medal win, some excitement about the men's program as well. And our next guest, we're always down to talk fantasy on this program. And an exciting new fantasy league for the Canadian Elite Basketball League is all part of our next conversation with the one and only Asa Rehman. Asa, what's up? It's great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are you doing?
Yeah, what's going on, Huss? Happy to be here. And you're making me miss Winnipeg with all those mentions. So Little Brown Jug has been added to the list. Definitely got to check that out next time I'm in town. And heading back to the track, obviously, at the top of the list as well. That was one of my favorite places to check out, the Assiniboia Downs. And one of my favorite parts about just going to the track for me was the trek out there, the trip from South Osborne, heading out to Assiniboia Downs. And for me, because I'm from Vancouver originally, very hilly, but Winnipeg's quite flat. And I would definitely notice the change in elevation when I was going to the track. And it felt like, yeah, this is a trip. We're going to the track. We're going to get into it and hopefully win some money. So yeah, I definitely got to check out those places next time I'm back in town.
Hey, well, speaking about your time in Winnipeg, I couldn't help but notice the Bonnie Vital soccer gear you're rocking today.
Repping the boys and girls at Bonnie Vital. I played at a Bonnie Vital, coached as well, and I do miss it. Had a lot of fun. A great organization. Hope everyone there is doing well.
Let me ask you before we get to the fantasy stuff about the women's victory on Friday. Really writing back to the quarterfinal against Brazil, which was another heart-stopping penalty shootout, and then the win over the U.S. that had been 20 years in the making, and then finally getting it done in the most thrilling, heart-stopping fashion. Have you calmed down from that victory? Have you put it into perspective of where this ranks? Not just, obviously, it's the biggest Canadian soccer win, not even close in history, but how big of a moment is this historically for Canadian sports, Asa?
Massive. I mean, worth waking up early for, staying up late for, which is why we all did that through that run. And it was an inspiring performance. You mentioned the win over the United States and then over Sweden, and just the spirited performance that they showed. And every time I talk about the team, I get excited. The goosebumps come back. And I'm sure you get this, Hustle, when you're talking about the Jets. People see you, they run into you, they want to talk Jets right away. It's the same for me with soccer. So it's the first thing people mention when I see them is just that women's national team, what they did at the Olympics and how they performed. And I can't help but mention just the diversity and the variety of players that they have on this team and the way they come together, because you have such a varying difference in age and experience, and they all came together. And I think that's why they performed so well at this tournament. They really bought in. Bev Priestman did an amazing job taking over from John Herdman, obviously, and this team just really found this ride in this tournament. And it's really exciting because I don't think they're done. I think that this is just setting them up for success in the future. So it's a fun time to be a fan of the sport in this country.
Well, no doubt about it. And I mean, the two people that we talk about the most here, obviously Christine Sinclair, the GOAT, I mean, the highest scoring international player of any sex in FIFA history. And of course, Desiree Scott here from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember the moment you talk about getting sort of verklempt or, your eyes going up. I mean, I've had this go on just thinking about this for the last week since it happened. But the USA game, I remember Sinclair being subbed out, and she went and put the captain's armband on Desiree Scott, and then they went out and finished the job and beat the Americans. And I mean, it's hard. Yeah. It's hard to imagine two women, two athletes that are more deserving of the final result of what happened in Tokyo than Sinclair and Desiree. Sinclair will always get the headlines because she has essentially kind of, almost was the starting point to build up this next generation of players. But Desiree as well from your time here in Winnipeg. Yep. And we just, a thought on both of those incredible veterans and, just how great it was to see them finally get their just desserts.
Well, it's the calm under pressure and the leadership, right? Those two in particular. And I just love watching Desiree Scott play. It's not the type of player that I was when I played, but it's a hard-nosed, get your job done player. And you need that, especially in tournaments, in every sport. And you can see the work that she puts in, and it's inspiring. I think it gets everyone else to appreciate and buy in to what they need to do, because you can't just finesse your way through a tournament, through a season. And she really speaks to that grit, that grind, that steel that you need in the middle of the park. And I think that she's a big reason why they won at the Olympics.
Well, and I mean, as far as Sinclair goes, there's not enough, we don't really have the words to describe her importance to this team. Yeah. But it really was amazing to see. I mean, her handing the ball off to Jessie Fleming. I mean, this is not only the greatest player in the history of the game when it comes to the women's game, but also, the consummate teammate. I mean, it has never been about Christine Sinclair. It's always been about the squad. And we saw that time after time in this tournament. And that bodes well for Canada going forward with this next generation. Sure. At some point, we'll take the baton from Sinclair after, she's been the captain of this club for the better part of the last couple of decades. But as someone that's covered the game for so long, seeing her get that gold medal, hard to beat it.
So sweet, right? And this is a player that everyone has rooted for so long in the women's game, in soccer in general. Anyone that's followed her, anyone that's seen her, was just rooting for her, pulling for her to get that victory. And she got it. And she deserves full credit for the job that she did in this tournament, and then building this team up as well, setting them up for success at Tokyo. And a shout out to, you mentioned the penalty shootout, and keeper Stephanie Labay. It was incredible as well, and her poise throughout Tokyo was impressive.
Well, and you know what? Just one other thing about the shootout, because I do want to ask you about the men. We talk a lot about Julia Grosso. I mean, 20 years old. She was 11 watching Team Canada when they got screwed in 2012 against the Americans in the London Olympics, and that team, it's obvious, has already inspired another generation that are now kicking in. And we focus so much on that final penalty. I got to tell you, maybe the most clutch thing I saw in the entire tournament was Rose nailing that one in the top corner on the fifth penalty when if she didn't score, it was over in a silver medal.
So clutch. Yes, but in watching those penalties, I don't know how you felt about it, Huss, but it seemed like they needed to do that. And rarely do I see that in a shootout where both keepers are just dialed in. And it felt like they needed to go upstairs, top corner, which is why the Swedish player, I think, put it over because she knew that she had to essentially put it top in to score. Both keepers did an amazing job, put so much pressure. And then, Grosso to put that away was so nice. It was awesome to watch.
So we're on the top of the world for the women. Now it's time for our men to sort of follow suit. And, we've got Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David. For the first time, I think, as a Canadian soccer fan of the men's program, you can be legitimately excited about what's to come. But short term, this team still has some pretty big qualifying games coming up that will be happening here in Canada. Fill us in on where the Can MNT are at in their World Cup hopes.
Yeah, it starts September 2nd to BMO Field against Honduras, and that really sets the stage for them. They should get that result, and they're at a stage now, and I think we saw this through qualifying and through the Olympics as well. Just they are expected to win these games, or Gold Cup, I should say, through the Gold Cup. They expect to win these games, and they should. They have enough talent on the team, and they're playing really well. I was really impressed with the way they performed against Mexico, a heartbreaking defeat in the end, allowing a goal in injury time and stoppage time, but really went at them the entire match. And that gave me a great confidence for the team going forward because it showed me that this team can perform under pressure. And that's usually at this stage, the final round of World Cup qualifying is when they'd stumble. They'd go up against opponents that were at least level or even maybe a little bit better and potentially be intimidated. I don't see that in this team. There's a really good calming sense of belief throughout the entire roster and incredible talent coming off the bench as well. So it's really good and encouraging going forward because they believe they can win. And I think that's the most important thing, right? So there's no doubt in their mind now when they go up against the United States, they go up against Mexico, Honduras even, and they feel like they can win and they can compete and they go at them. So they don't play tentatively. And that's, I think, the most exciting thing about this team in those upcoming matches. And that first one, September 2nd, BMO Field against Honduras.
The Canadian team, on the women's side is the toast of the country. Anytime they'll play on Canadian soil, they'll have a ton of Canadian fans. But to be honest, it always drove me nuts when you saw these international games that our Canadian men's team would play, with the exception of maybe in Edmonton. I did work with the Oilers about 2 decades ago and went to a game between Canada and Trinidad and Tobago. Dwight York was playing. But it was definitely a pro-Canada crowd. That hasn't been the case in so many of the other matches. There hasn't been any home. I have to ask you, do you think that this victory by the Canadian women might actually help galvanize people to pay a bit more attention to the men's side and actually cheer for our team as opposed to wherever they're from when they happen to play against Canada?
Sure, it helps. I think the sport in general as a whole, I think it's just getting more people on board and just the people, I guess the next generation is maybe a little more attached to the Canadian game as well, which is nice to see. So you're having just more people tune in to these teams. And I see it when I drop off my girls to their soccer camp in the summer. Every morning this week, they go and you'd see Sinclair jerseys, and you'd see that in the past, but you also see the boys with the Alphonso Davies kits and Jonathan David. So yeah, there's just more attention being given now to all programs. And I think there's a greater aspiration to actually play for these teams. And that wasn't always the case. I think a lot of people would maybe hold out hope if you were a talented player to potentially play for another country. That's not the case anymore. I think everyone's looking to play for Canada and sign up and represent Canada, and that's great to see.
Well, it certainly is. Asa Rehman with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Now, Asa, I could talk soccer with you all day, but you're actually involved in a very exciting, and God knows any regular listener knows how much Remis and I are into fantasy. But this is a really interesting project involving the CEBL, which is the Canadian Elite Basketball League. Now, I will tell you that without a team here in Winnipeg, I'm aware of the league, but I think myself and most of the people with us not really familiar with the CEBL. So give us a quick primer on this league right now before we get into what you and Now Fantasy are doing with the CEBL.
Well, I was going to quickly say, Huss, that this is a great way to get into the league or just get interested in the league and see what's going on. And that's a fantasy game. But yeah, it's a 7-team league. Just wrapped up the season last night. Saskatchewan playing last night. They ended up losing to Fraser Valley. So yeah, that just wrapped up the season. So now we're looking into the playoffs, and it starts this weekend. A game on Saturday, game on Sunday. So some exciting action that you can just sign up to the site as well, CEBL.ca, and you can subscribe to see the games, the highlights, and really, it's all on the website. You can take in all the information you need on the league. And from what I read, from what I understand as well, Winnipeg's looking to have a team. So, and the league is looking to expand, hopefully, in one of these markets like Winnipeg. And I think it'd be great. I think Winnipeg would be a great spot for the CEBL franchise. So, yeah, we'll. I encourage you to check out the website, and then obviously, if you want to get into the fantasy game, test that out as well.
Yeah, so Remo, if you're with us live on the YouTube, you just go into the chat. Remo's thrown out there. It's a fantasy.cebl.ca. Interesting, similar salary cap based based game. That people can go in, can win some prizes, and most importantly, I think for the league, Asa, gives them the opportunity to sort of maybe get a few more people paying attention to this league outside of the 7 markets. And yeah, to your point, I am with you 100%. I mean, I think the basketball community here continues to grow. Yeah. I mean, it's huge at a grassroots level. And it's been a few years since we had the Winnipeg Thunder, the Winnipeg Cyclone here. And, you know, I certainly think with the prominence of the basketball here in Winnipeg, as well as coast to coast, there's a big market for it. Of course, people in Winnipeg will realize probably the biggest challenge right now is availability of a building. Ever since the Manitoba Moose came to Winnipeg, the amount of dates that are taken during the hockey season with both the Winnipeg Jets and the Moose is significant, making it very difficult to squeeze other events or certainly a full schedule in. And until the Ice get that building built that they have announced, I'm not sure where it's at right now, we don't really have a secondary building, so that probably is the challenge. But as far as the market goes, really across Canada, basketball continues to grow. And, I think the potential for this league is really exciting going forward.
It's huge. The sport's growing. We talked about it on the soccer side, obviously, but basketball the same way. And you see it through the NBA draft every year, kids coming out of Canada going to the NBA, and it's great to have a league now where players can play. And a lot of players in the league might have played in Europe before if they weren't in the NBA. So now there's a place for them to play at home, and a lot of Americans in the league as well. And it's great for some of these markets. It's an exciting, fun atmosphere. They have an Elam ending, which some people might be familiar with, basically a target scored inside the last 4 minutes, which makes for an exciting finish. So some real cool, innovative things that the league is doing. And we're happy that they took us on to create their fantasy game as well. So that's just one of the things that they've done. So it's a really cool, fun, young emerging league.
I shouldn't be shocked. Our girl Taylor, who is the president of the Logan Stanley fan club, a mainstay with us every day, just dropped in. I absolutely love the CEBL. Nice. Let's go Rattlers. So she's even got a team already. So Taylor, will we maybe be getting some tips from you on our picks for the CEBL fantasy? What's the timelines? I mean, people can go and check it out right now. You mentioned the games are starting up. I mean, all the rules and how things will work will all be there on the site. But I imagine people have a couple days that want to get a lineup in and get ready to check out what happens come playoff time.
Yeah. It's a quick rundown. Basically, you got till the weekend, till that first tip off to get your team in. It's really easy. Go to the website, fantasy.cebl.ca, and you start building your team right away. You're picking your favorite 5, your Fab 5, if you will, 2 guards, 3 forwards, staying under that cap, just like a DFS league would require you to do. And then you hope for the best. And you compete for prizes, top prize for each round, so through the quarterfinal, the semifinal, and the final stage, and then an overall winner as well. So you're competing with everyone else that's signing up for the game, and it should be a whole lot of fun. Should be pretty competitive. Already over 100 people signed up, so that number continues to go up, and we're pretty excited about that.
Well, I think this will be a great way to introduce our Winnipeg Sports Talk audience to the CEBL while we wait to see if maybe in the future a team might come to Winnipeg. Asa, always love having you on the program, man. Thanks so much for doing this. You be well, and let's catch up again soon.
Sounds good, Huss. Thanks so much.
Great stuff. You can give him a follow on Twitter at Asa Rehman, ASAREHMAN. Long time working with One Soccer, Fox Soccer here in Winnipeg, and now out on the West Coast working with Now Fantasy. Great friend of the program, and great to have Asa on with us today on Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right, it has been a great show. Murat, Zach Collaros, Asa Rehman. Now we do have to get down to business. We do have our picks for the track tonight, but Remo, let's get into our Coolbet lines of the day. And Blue Jays back in action tonight. We're still waiting on those official CFL lines, although my guy Chris Abbott has assured me that starting next week after these games, Coolbet will lead the way with CFL lines. We'll have them early in the week, which will be great for bettors, great for us to talk about them here on the program. But right now we got 3 games going on. Later on tonight, it's Alek Manoah and the Toronto Blue Jays in LA to take on the Angels. The Jays minus 175 favorites. Now I'm going to point you, Remo, if you can, go to the front, the main page. Just click on Coolbet right at the top. And then if you go down on the left side, you'll see there's MLB, you go down. Then there's also, or actually you're up on the top, the Lock Shop boosted odds parlay. So if you're not familiar with the Lock Shop, I make a pick, Dusty makes a pick, and Chris Abbott makes a pick, and we put it together on a parlay. We've won 2 in a row. We're looking to go 3 in a row. Now, the picks for today, I am on the Cubs, who are a big favorite. I'm on the Brewers, who are a big favorite against the Cubs, who have traded away all their players. Chris Abbott is riding Alek Manoah on the first 5 innings, line, money line, Blue Jays to win the first 5 innings. And Dusty's on the Elks. Now, this is a bit of an insider tip for you all. We put this odds out originally, and the line for the Brewers was, ESPN was posting about 150, 160, and it was off the board at Coolbet. And we gave it to the odds makers. They always put the odds together, and then they boost it. Well, the original odds was plus 220, which they boosted to plus 300. But then once we saw what happened to the Brewers line, which went down to minus 270, this is by far the best value we have ever had with a boosted odds parlay. If you put these 3 together, and again, the Elks money line isn't even out, but it probably is in and around minus 165. We're probably looking at a parlay that would be about plus 180. We're getting plus 300 on this one. So if you haven't bet at Coolbet before, you can always use the promo code WST. You will get a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. If you're already a cool bettor, just simply go there. If you want to ride with us on an amazing boosted parlay, it's plus 300. Got to get in before these games start tonight. And fingers crossed, Brewers will win, the Jays will win in the first 5, and then we'll be in a situation with a plus 300 ticket that if you're worried about the Elks, you can back the Alouettes on the money line and make a profit on either side. So very excited about this. We're hoping to go 3-0, but I was especially excited when I saw what the boosted number was because I think they maybe made, what does they say in a Monopoly, error in your favor? I think that's the way it is. So if you want to get in on that, it's the Lock Shop boosted odds partner parlay. I'm in on it. And once I realized what the line was, I have to admit, I doubled down during the Lock Shop. Again, check out Lock Shop on the podcast. Search Lock Shop wherever you get in your podcasts. We're putting those out on Wednesdays for the month of August, and then back to 2 times a week once the NFL gets going a little bit later on. There is quite a bit of tennis going on as well. Bianca Andreescu with the big win yesterday. Today, I do believe that we've got Denis Shapovalov playing. He's a minus 250 favorite against Francis Tiafoe a little bit later on. That one will certainly be on the tube. So certainly lots going on right now at the on the tennis courts north of the border in both Montreal and Toronto. Again, all the odds available at Coolbet.com, and we should have the official CFL lines, I'd imagine, tomorrow for Coolbet. But Bombers apparently looking at some other books in and around a 6.5 point favorite. To be honest, I think I like Toronto and the points in that. I do like the Bombers to win this game, but I think that this will be this isn't going to be a walkover for the Bombers. I think the Argos are going to come and, McLeod, Bethel, Thompson, Remis, as we remember from 2019, sort of bit of a number on the Bombers when they were going into that little bit of a slump mid-season. And MBT, despite how bad the team was overall in 2019, has shown that he can move the football and throw touchdowns. And now that he's getting pushed by Nick Arbuckle, I think that quarterback competition in Toronto bodes very well for the chances of the double blue going forward. So I think we're going to have a hell of a football game on Friday night. And I think I'm actually going to take the points with the Argos and the Bombers on the money line.
Yeah, let's see if the Bombers can stay fired up. No banner unveiling. But you look at how the Bombers just dominated Hamilton. I mean, 6 points. That is an elite offense. I'd like to think that they can do that to the Alouettes, although they're improved. Not to the Alouettes. The Argos, they're improved. Eric Rogers, Tavares Daniels coming over from Calgary. Ricky Collins Jr. was the big star last game. So what do they got? John White running the ball. I think I would maybe lean the Bombers, but I'm not sold. I'm not sold on the Argos. The one team I think is going to bounce back is the team that lost to the Argos in Calgary. I know they had some issues with receivers coming in and out of the game. The Calgary they don't like to lose to the Argos. They hadn't lost in a while. I think I am on Bo this week for a bounce back win against BC, who's starting. They say that they're starting Nathan Rourke at quarterback. We'll see what Mike Riley has to say about that. Once kickoff starts.
You got it. Hey, by the way, I know what many of you, if you're listening on the podcast, we were talking about all the great merch at Royal Sports and, the Canadian soccer gear and everything else. I do see, shout out to Greg, who is in the chat right now. Fingers crossed that our new era Winnipeg Sports Talks hats are coming in. We know they're very busy. Lots going on right now on the new year side of things, but we're counting down the days. Hopefully we'll have those soon. As soon as we have them, you'll know about it, and you'll be able to pick them up. We'll probably have some, I would imagine, over at Royal. If people want to pop in there, and we're not doing a big run on them, but depending on how things go right out the gate, certainly looking forward to do more. I know many people have asked about the hats coming soon. In the meantime, we still have the opportunity to get a hoodie or a t-shirt or a tank top like our boy Gitch is doing. Just got to get those out. So just go to winnipegsportstalk.com/store, see what the options are. And as I said, waiting patiently. Cannot wait to get those hats in. All right, Remo, let's get to the picks. You were 0 for last night. I did get a win. I was right in and around even. I think my winning ticket was 1940, and I put down 20. So it was one of those nights where it was a fun night at the track. Didn't really make up any ground, but didn't take any big L's. I know you were pouring over the numbers and the lines as we talked to Zach Collaros early.
Yes, I have been looking, and I went 0 for yesterday, so I'm in a bad mood, Huss. I'm not feeling great about my selections. At least how I've done. I'm still confident in my abilities.
Believe in yourself, Remis. Believe in yourself.
We're gonna turn this bus around one way or another. And I'm doing a 4 Quinella. I was close. My boy Drizzy, who I picked to win yesterday, finished second. So it's not like my picks are that bad, but they just haven't won. Race 4, 3-4 Quinella, Eddie Forever, Gold Buyer. I'm on that one. Race 5, an 8-3 Quinella, Valid Thor, Empirical Data. The data says to pick that horse. That's what I'm reading. Race 6. Another 8-5. I got Stone Cafe and Flash of Glory. And race 7. I apparently I like horse 8 tonight. That seems like I'm not, when I just picked 3 8s, all in a row. That's I don't know how I feel about that. But anyway, Cyclone Dan and Purely Given. So that's my 4 for Quinella. It's time to get back in the W.
Nice, and I like that you started with race 4, went 4, 5, 6, 7. This is sort of like betting the West Coast slate of hockey games. You can get in, put the kid to bed, and watch the later races.
I have slow pitch playoffs tonight, so.
Oh wow!
I'll come
big
home
playoff game in the Jewish Men's Slow Pitch League.
That's right.
Is this game number 1?
This is we're in the wild card for do or die elimination game. We're defending our back-to-back titles, looking for a three-peat this year. Pressure.
Didn't expect to be in the wild card game, I bet.
No, we've kind of, when we've won the regular season, it hasn't worked out well. So I think the last couple of years we actually have had to win these wild card games to advance to the best of 3. So we've been here before, so I'm not too worried.
We've been here before. I like it.
We're a team, Huss, that we kind of we like to cruise through the regular season and hit our stride in time for the playoffs. That's how we've done it the last couple.
Hit it tonight. There's no tomorrow if you guys don't get the W.
Yes.
My picks, I'm going to kind of do the opposite of Remis. I'm going to start off with the first few races and, who knows, hopefully you win a couple and maybe then sprinkle on the final few. Starting off with race number 1, it's a short race. There's 6 horses and kind of going a little chalky, but trying to take the top 2 for a Quinella. We've got Nothing But a Blur is horse number 2, and Mr. Fallon, horse number 4. So we'll go with the 2 for Quinella. We're going to put down a couple of triactor boxes. It's a $6 bet. On race number 2, we're going to go with Sea Myrtle, Valente, horse number 3, and Catalina Dreamin', horse number 5. I'm going to pop that in for a $6 triactor box, and we're going to do the same thing on race number 3 with horse number 2, Miss Imperial, horse 3, DARPA, and horse number 4, Cypress Point. Going into number 4, we can both be winners. I know you had Gold Buyer in on your parlay, Remis. I'm taking Gold Buyer to win. It's horse number 4. And because you always got to bet Otani before, I'm going to take Otani. I'm going to bet Otani to show in race number 5.
He's scratched.
Whoa!
Yeah, he's got scratched. There you go.
Well, he's been scratched since I looked it up. I was doing it off the program. So I will have to figure out something else, or maybe I'll just jack up those for one of those, put another couple bucks on one of those first 4 bets. But those are the selections for today. Again, the track is open. If you have your proof of vaccination, you can head down there with the family, hang out outside, get some food, put the toonie down on some tickets and enjoy the races. And again, reservations are available at the Terrace Dining Room. Incredible food at Assiniboia Downs if you're looking to really make a night of it. Great thing to do as well. And if you're a VLT player, VLT's open 9 a.m. to 12:15 a.m. Man, really, this has been an awesome show in the middle of the week. And I got to tell you, very much looking forward to tomorrow's program where we will debut. I hope to do this on the reg, depending on how much availability our guest has. But CFL fans will know the name Nick Kowalski, very sharp young mind here in Winnipeg, doing some great work on the CFL, was a former intern with us back at the old station. Nick has been killing it, and he killed it in week number 1 of the CFL, and we're going to hopefully get some insight and some Nick's picks tomorrow, getting ready for week 2 in the Canadian Football League. He'll join us as well. We'll also be talking to Matt Calvert, who just hung it up after an incredible NHL career. So the Manitoba native is going to join us. We'll also have more on the Winnipeg Jets coming out of the Neal Pionk contract signing and what that means for Andrew Kopp and the rest of this offseason. So it should be a big show. And then, of course, Friday, Bombers game day. We'll have tons on the blue and gold and the double blue. But as I've said a couple times, so excited to welcome Olympic gold medalist. God, that sounds awesome. Desiree Scott, Winnipeg's own, to the program on Friday. It's just getting better day by day, Remo. Can't wait for the next couple days heading into the game on Friday night.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. We're going to head to CFL Week 2, so I want to hear what Nick has to say, and it'll be right in time before I have to lock my DraftKings picks. If you want to play CFL DraftKings, I know there's like 4 spots left in our league. You and I are in it. We got to get our selections in.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, folks, if you haven't reserved a spot already in the contest, we're at 36 out of 40. So it's going to fill quickly. Maybe if you want to just drop that link in the chat for people that are there. If not, if you are a DraftKings player and you're listening on the podcast, you can hit us up on Twitter. Just let us know your DraftKings handle and we'll get you an invite. But the bottom line is what you want to do on the reg is just go to our Winnipeg Sports Talk League and see I'm not sure why we don't able to send out notifications like we used to before. It's very frustrating, but the good thing is we're working around it. We filled it in week number 1, and it looks like we're going to fill it in week 2 even earlier than we did before. So who knows, if we keep having great turnouts, we may be able to expand it to 50 or more going forward. But it'll be a 40-person contest this week. Again, we are in. There's 4 spots left.
Yeah. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Levi and Chathus. I guess I had Neal Pionk's new deal in the title. He says Neal Pionk is a boss. His dad runs a great hockey camp for the last 20 years. in Hermantown. Real nice family. And I don't know, Huss, if you've seen like the Pionk Boys commercial that's been floating around. And he also adds, Pionk Boys are all good hockey players. Neal's brother in high school could play at least D1 someday. So could he be another Minnesota Jets selection? That's something to watch for. But yeah, if you missed the Pionk conversation or tune in, go back to the first like 50 minutes of the show where it was all Jets for the first 50 minutes. And that was awesome. That was awesome to hear. So we hear everyone saying in Chevy we trust. So great to see. Oh yeah, no. And someone's BA Split brings up the Kevin Weeks video. Do we want to play this?
Okay. Well, you know what? Don't play it because we've had a great show. I don't want to get a DCMA because I'm not sure about the copyright for that, but I will direct people. If you just go to my Twitter at Hustlerama, it was a clip. God, this is hilarious. A clip of Kevin Weeks on Spittin' Chicklets along with Biz and Ryan Whitney. And he's telling the story of his first ever playoff start for the Canes when Paul Maurice was the coach. And listen, Maurice is the best with the media, but I think we got a little bit of a window into why he has been so popular with his players and the sort of guy that he is. And Weeks' impression of Paul Maurice telling him that he is going to be the starter in the playoffs is absolutely hysterical. Any Jet fan needs to watch it. So there you have it. It's a Spittin' Chicklets.
Yeah.
If you want to just go to Twitter, go to my feed. It is there. And if you're like me, you'll probably watch it over and over and over again. But I mean, Weeks has turned into one of the great analysts and personalities in hockey media, had a great career. And it was just hilarious to hear him perfectly do his Maurice impersonation that got everybody laughing. It's the funniest thing I've seen in a long time from a Jets perspective.
Yeah, we like to do Paul Maurice impressions once in a while. I'll throw it, it's a real grinder of a game. And nice to hear that Kevin Weeks impression I felt like was similar to mine. So I'm on the right tracks. I'll check out Hustler's Twitter for that one. That was a good video.
It was, anyways, it was so funny. And as I said, there's a little bit of blue language, which obviously we don't get in the media, but that is, I think, it's a nice window into how Maurice handles his players and, what he said. So anyways, it needs to be heard for yourself. Head over and, you can share that, send it over to your friends if they haven't seen it. All right, this is great. My schedule, I got to run right now. The schedule's a little bit different. I'm going to be on today and tomorrow in Calgary with the guys on Sports at 960. So if you still want more, I'll be jumping on about half an hour with the guys. And I think John Hodge is going to join us, so we will have some more CFL talk a little bit later on the program there. I'll be back tomorrow here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, back tomorrow on 960 again. And then Friday, I won't do the regular shift with the guys in Calgary because we'll be getting ready to head down to IG Field and see the Bombers attempt to go 2-0 against the Toronto Argonauts. And of course, the highlight of my entire week, Desiree Scott joining us live on Winnipeg Sports Talk on Friday afternoon.
But yeah, before we go, I'll give a shout out. Huss, I watched a documentary on Netflix yesterday. It just came out on the Malice in the Palace. You remember the Pacers brawl with the fans. Some great in-depth interviews with Jermaine O'Neal, the artist formerly known as Ron Artest, Meta World Peace, and Steven Jackson, and Reggie Miller as well. Just talking about that team, what they were building towards, and how it all fell apart. And also, I think, puts a lot of blame on the fans and gives some light onto athletes' mental issues when it comes to Ron Artest, what he was going through at that time. So it was about an hour watch. Highly recommend. I really enjoyed it. I remember when that happened. So I wanted to give a shout out to that.
That was absolutely, it's a watershed moment. I mean, it changed a lot of things in the NBA. But, looking back at it now, I mean, this was more than just a bunch of thugs. I mean, this was a two-way street. And it was interesting. I saw that piece that you tweeted out yesterday and really much looking forward to that. Speaking of documentaries, I'm sure all the Leaf fans in the house can't wait to see this Leafs documentary that's coming out shortly. I don't know much about it other than it is going to be released. All 5 or 6 episodes, however many it is, are going to be open at the same time. So you can grind away through the whole thing. And when the Leafs did come here, I knew they did have camera crews, so I'm pretty sure this sort of followed them throughout the year. Cannot wait to see the episode of Game 5, 6, and 7 of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs and how this one ends.
Yeah, it's a documentary that follows the Leafs last season. It's on Amazon Prime, and if you're not Prime, I'm gonna recommend doing
I am Prime.
That.
I don't have any of these other streaming services. Yeah. I do have Amazon Prime, so finally I can watch one of these things. Great.
It's for last season, but it starts when this season begins. So I wonder how relevant it's gonna be. But if it's about the Leafs, I'm sure people are gonna watch it no matter what. But it seems odd to me to release it right before this season starts, and it's all last season. I guess there's issues with editing and it takes time. I don't know if it's going to be have that impact if it's not timely.
Oh, so this is the bubble year?
This is, the season that just played, yes.
Oh, yeah.
The season that just
the
played.
Canadian division. Yeah, the Canadian division,
So,
exactly.
I mean, we'll see. I think we'll see. People are going to be talking about it. I don't know if we'll have any, Randy Carlyle toaster moments again, if you remember that one from Road to the Winter Classic, but... It's called All for Nothing. So I don't know if that's a thing, but
All for Nothing? That's what it's called?
All or Nothing. All or Nothing. all or Nothing.
I think a more appropriate title is All for Nothing.
No.
The story of the Toronto Maple Leafs 2021 season.
all or nothing. So
that was one of the great Freudian slips we've ever had on the program. Nicely done, Reem, even if you didn't intend to do it. And Greg at Royal, Malice in the Palace on a Grey Cup weekend, the Ottawa one. We'll take Greg's word for it, a Grey Cup veteran of many, many years. All right, everyone, it's been a great show today. Big thank you to Murat for joining us, Bomber quarterback Zach Collaros, Asa Rehman, of course, Michael Remis, and a great crowd with us today in the middle of summer here live on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, thanks so much for being with us. If you can, give us a 5-star rating and a little review. Certainly helps us grow the channel. If you haven't already, folks, on your way out, hit the thumbs up button and make sure you have subscribed. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest on the Jets, the Bombers Argos matchup. Matt Calvert joining the program. Some sharp picks from CFL from our pal Nick Kowalski. And Friday, don't you dare miss Desiree Scott with us live here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Cannot wait for that. All right, everyone, I got to run. Thanks so much for being with us. We will talk to you tomorrow on our way out. Thank you to Royal Sports, Canadian Club, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Paramount Services Limited, our friends over at Not Auto Corp, and Boston Pizza. Little Brown Jug, Assiniboia Downs, live racing tonight, don't forget, and Breezy Bend Country Club, and of course, Coolbet Canada. Still time to get on that Lock Shop Boosted Odds Partner Parlay at coolbet.com. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m., live on YouTube, and later on in the afternoon in your podcast feed on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night, everyone.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.